Hi everyone, Owen from Evenstar. Welcome to Facebook Live for this evening. I will try not to get excited and shout out to people as they join me this evening, but please just know that I'm very happy to see you there. And if you can't watch live, then I'm happy that you have joined in a bit later on. If you do have any questions, because this is just such a common topic and common problem that I deal with in my practice and that everybody out there has, being anxiety. So if you've got any questions, please do put them in the comments and I will try to deal with them. But otherwise, I will try not to shout out excitedly when people join me for tonight. So yes, anxiety, something that we all deal with. Pretty much, everyone I think could relate to feeling anxious at some point, probably most weeks. And sometimes that can result in you feeling, that butterflies in the pit of the stomach. You might feel like your heart is racing. You might feel a bit sweaty, clammy. You might feel like you just don't have a clear head and space to think through things. So luckily, though, for most of us, that is a feeling that passes. So whatever the reason is that you're feeling that, perhaps you've got to sit an exam, perhaps you've got a meeting with your boss, perhaps like me a few weeks ago, you have to drive a 6-berth camper van, which you've never done before. But it's something that is an event in your life and it passes, and the headache, the stomach cramps, the sweaty palms go away when the thing that is causing you the anxiety goes away. However, for some people, anxiety is pretty much a way of life and they have some of those symptoms, or sometimes, a lot worse, with them pretty much all the time, which is something which is really awful to have to deal with, as you can appreciate. And probably a lot of you out there know somebody who is like that, at least to some extent, and perhaps not all the time, but you just think, oh gee, that person's pretty uptight, and it may be that they actually are dealing with a real level of anxiety, and it's something that makes it very hard to feel well, to enjoy life. And that's why I wanted to talk about it today, because as I said, it is something that a lot of people come and see me about. And I had a female client recently, or she started coming to see me, I think, around early in the new year. And she's just had such an amazing turnaround from Reiki. She certainly credits her success in turning around her anxiety with the Reiki, and I guess all the other things that we've talked through together about her general well-being as well. So I wanted to share that with you. So this lady, I will call Sarah for today, because she hasn't actually yet told me whether she's happy for me to use her real name. So I'm just going to call her Sarah. And she came to me a couple of months after her second panic attack. So she is a lady in, I guess, early middle age, been in the same job for about 10 years, has always, or for most of her adult life, had problems with blood pressure, high blood pressure, but that's managed by medication. But she just found that she was starting to experience bouts of anxiety more and more. She was not sleeping very well. She would have uncontrollable thoughts, a racing mind, and largely about things that in the logical part of her brain she knew she had no control over. So things like criminals are going to break into her house, or that when she had a bit of an ache or a pain somewhere in her body, she'd suddenly find herself thinking the worst and thinking, oh my goodness, I've got some terrible disease, and she'd be constantly going to the doctor. And in the end, she had this second panic attack and went to the doctor again, and the doctor prescribed her with anti-anxiety medication and also sent her off to see a psychologist. In the meantime, she had started to hear about Reiki from a few different people, from family and from friends, and came across my website because she lives in the western suburbs. and contacted me to have a very long conversation, because even with regards to what was going to help her, and because she was so anxious about her health overall, she had a really long chat to me on the phone before she even booked an appointment. And then when she came, she actually brought her whole family with her, because she was too anxious to drive herself to the appointment, perfectly capable of driving normally, but, you know, coming to a strange place in the dark, she just wasn't comfortable with. So her whole family came with her, which was lovely to meet them, but very unusual, and just a demonstration of how anxious she was feeling about absolutely everything in her life. So we talked in my session, as I do with everyone, about all the other aspects, all the other 5 pillars, or as I like to think of them, as the 5 stars of wellbeing. So you can have 5-star wellbeing, and talk through the fact that perhaps she could look at exercising a bit more. Now, they were all things that she knew on one level she needed to do to help herself, so she could do a bit more exercise. She really wanted to start yoga. She had done some meditation in the past, but again had let that drop off, so we talked about that. Food, talked about the fact that she really needed to avoid going for those fast convenience foods, which wasn't something she did a lot, but, you know, especially when you're in a rush, busy, you know, full-time worker with a child as well, and talked through that and how that can have a real effect. And as I've talked about in other videos recently, the effect of bad food on your gut microbiome, and then how this in fact affects your brain and can have a massive impact on your mental health. So we talked through that. We talked through her sleep. So she, as I mentioned, she'd been having trouble with sleep. She felt like she couldn't fall asleep easily, and she described herself as someone who normally would fall asleep anywhere, which is a lovely problem to have, but she was having trouble falling asleep. So we talked through that she could use some essential oils to help her fall asleep, and make sure she turned her phone and her screen and laptops off well before going to bed. And we also talked about the fact that she needed to come to some level of understanding about what the underlying causes were of her anxiety. Anyway, so she had her first session with me, so we did a lovely Reiki session after that big long conversation. And then when she came back for her second appointment, which was a bit over a week afterwards, she was just amazed at the turnaround. So she had literally not had to take her anti-anxiety medication. She felt like her mind was clearer. She had been sleeping better. So there was this really clear change for her. She went on then to have another session. So normally most people who are dealing with something like that are going to need at least 3 sessions. So she went on to have that series of 3 sessions, and then came back again to see me recently, which is a few months later, and this was like a different person walking in the door. She'd actually gone through the whole process of getting a new job. So she'd been in her job for 10 years. She'd completely decided to change career paths down the path of something that she was really interested in, education. She'd done that. She'd left her job. She'd started her training for her new career. She was sleeping really well. She had not had to take her medication at all. And she also had decided that she didn't need to see the psychologist anymore. Now, I certainly don't want anyone to think that I'm saying that medication and psychology or any kind of counselling does not have its place. It absolutely does. Medication can be life-saving, as can talking through these kinds of situations with somebody who's qualified to do that with you. But in this situation, she really attributed her success and her overcoming that really crippling anxiety for her with the Reiki sessions that she was having. So I'm so grateful to have had her as a client, and that she has allowed me to share this story with everybody out there, because I think it's a really great example of what can happen when you open yourself up to having all your energies balanced again. And although she may not have had a good conscious understanding of why she was feeling like this, the Reiki energy working on all levels of her body, the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual levels, allowed her to get back into balance, to overcome that anxiety, and to get on with a life that was a lot happier and a lot more contented, and able to make a massive change that she's just delighted to be able to have done, and also to be able to demonstrate to her own young daughter that you know, she is in charge of her life, that she can make these changes, and that her illness is not going to take over their family as well. So if you do have any questions about that, and whether you think anything that I've talked about is something that might be applicable to you or someone you know, please, please, please feel free to get in touch with me and send me a private message, or however you'd like to get in contact with me. Otherwise, I hope you have a fantastic rest of the week, and I will see you again next time. Be well.